And the cards were really stacked against you guys. And like you said, the naming was a big part of how like the biggest obstacle probably at the beginning was coming up with a name. And there's a very good, like, interesting, funny story about how Comedy Central, the name, actually came to be. And I don't want to talk about that specifically because I think people should read that for themselves. But I did want to talk about, one of the other names that was thrown out there, and I wanted to read a passage from there. Yeah. Okay. Comedy may not be the focus of the channel forever, but I take your point. Let's look at some names, and I think you'll see that they say comedy and all the other things I talked about without using the word. With that, Fred placed a slide on the overhead projector. It had one word on it: big. Fred said with pride and finality, big. Big what? Bob asked. Just big. He went on to praise the name Big as perfect for a channel, explaining that it had balls, chutzpah, gravitas. It makes a statement, and it says what you want to be, big. He looked around and saw that despite his enthusiasm, this name wasn't giving anyone chills or palpitations. Undaunted, he removed the big slide without further comment and put up the next one. This too had one word on it: Acme. So I just thought it was really funny because these are terrible names, and it would have been a real tragedy if these two channels were named either Big or Acme instead of just a simple genius name that Comedy Central came to be. And it's always very interesting to see the thought process behind like how these things come to be, and specifically how they come to be named.
Yeah, it's interesting. We, obviously paid those guys a lot of money to help us come up with the name. And before you get too enthusiastic about tearing them apart, that was Fred Seiberg, who's a very, very smart, creative, influential guy. He went on to run the Comedy Network, the Cartoon Network, and he also made a lot of cartoons, a lot of animated programs that everybody knows. He's just a brilliant, very creative guy. So I didn't really want to make fun of him as much as just show that like everybody can make missteps all the time. And one of the things we talked about was like, oh my God, if we don't name it one of these things, maybe Fred's going to be mad. And the thing is, we were hiring him, so what were we worried about him being mad for? But he was a really big deal. He was a really big deal.
Yeah. Look, everybody has missteps, but I have to say Comedy Central is a much better name than Big or Acme for sure.
Yeah, we determined that. Yeah. And it was accidental because actually I will say this for Fred. Fred said at the beginning of the meeting, he said, okay, so here's the thing. You guys want to be like the center of the comedy universe. That's what you told me. And I said, yeah, that's what we told you. And he says, okay, so you want to be Comedy Central, but you don't want to call it that. And I said, why not? He said, too on the nose. I said, oh, all right. So pretty much came up with the name and then mixed it. Whatever you do, don't call it Comedy Central.
It was funny. He probably, thought of that like almost. It could have been like in that moment that he thought of, Comedy Central without even really thinking about it.
Yeah, true. Well, I personally wanted to call it Comedy Channel because what else do you call a channel that's about comedy? It's a comedy channel.
I mean, it made sense.
But that was off the table. So